Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of SDRescue. We're on episode 25. We're reviewing sales emails from real people out there trying to get meetings, trying to start conversations, and trying to not only give feedback and revisions on how they can improve, but also going through a rewrite so that we can show examples of how that seller can do their job better. My name is Grayson Fulbright. Always with me is Austin Fuller, my co-host. How are you doing today, Austin?
Doing really well. Today we've got an interesting, so we're actually going to review a sequence of emails. We've reviewed the first email in the sequence. We've got the next email here, but going to be taking a look at it in context of not only how to improve this email, but also, be able to show you what the impact on a reader is when you're sending multiple emails in the sequence. So I think it's really insightful for any full cycle AEs, SDRs, founders, whoever's trying to get meetings. I know we have that temptation to put someone in a sequence and kind of forget and just hope that different emails mix it up and convert. But if you think about something coherently in a string, you can use that to your advantage. We'll show you how to do that in the rewrite. First week doing the new format in the live Zoom meeting. So pretty excited. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I am really excited. For those of us who are just joining us or watching later, this is our first episode using Zoom conferencing to do an actual live show where you can go in the chats, ask questions, we'll answer them if we have time. So you can join us and see every week on LinkedIn our weekly event for this. And please feel free to share with friends or colleagues if you think they might get some value from this. I do think we're going to wait a few minutes to let a few more people pour in here, and we'll get started.
Perfect.
Austin, we could actually start.
You want me to pull open you want me to share the screen, share the emails?
I think maybe we can start actually by recapping the last episode where we checked out this person's sequence. And maybe just kind of touch base on the last email that they actually sent before they sent us this one that we're reviewing today.
Yeah, I'll bring it up. So that's a good place to start. So before, so this is the first email in the sequence. Where it was just before the turn of the new year. Says, hi, Austin, hope you're well with 2021 on the horizon. A lot of my customers are going through territory planning exercises right now. I can imagine that with everything that has happened this year, territory planning for 2021 will be a time-consuming exercise you will go through. Our Maps product enables territory planning, which enables teams to match revised business goals and external economic factors. Recently, these unplanned changes, customers have been able to rebalance accounts automatically across territories, visualize hard to find performance data in seconds, allow new plans to be tested without affecting current plans. And we use Maps at our company, and I want to see if you'd be interested in learning about how Maps can help new arcs as well. Do you have time to connect later this week or early next? So that's the intro. That was the first email we got introduced to, and they're obviously trying to. So this is an upsell to an existing customer. They are a vendor of ours, and I just want to put that out there as far as framing up this sequence. This is a sequence sent to, I've met this person over a virtual meeting. I have had a couple of interactions with them. And the thing that caught me off guard was how I must be a really low priority account in their portfolio, right? Because I know how a lot of companies do that, where they say, all right, you put your most tailored, personalized, whatever focused emails up to your high priority accounts. And then your B and C and D tier accounts have precipitating levels of customization. And so I would just guess, based on the fact that I've actually met this person and the lack of anything really customized or tailored or relevant to new arcs, we must be a pretty low priority account in their portfolio.
Yeah. And I think in the last episode, we did also kind of touch base on the fact that this is a person who has an existing relationship with both Austin and New Arcs. And so there's a little bit of a higher bar in terms of expectations for how they need to handle themselves and how they need to actually start conversations. And so, we just went through the first email, the intro email that they sent, and this email that we'll be reviewing today is actually the follow-up to that, to try to start up that conversation in the new year about territory planning. Austin, do you want to go ahead and get the email for today shared and we can dive into it?
Yeah. And the other thing I want to talk about too is, so we know that email, this email right here didn't get it done. This first one, I didn't reply. And I haven't really replied to the second one either. I haven't. So we know they didn't get it done. And I just want to make the statement that, there are people that are sending emails like this one, very similar, outbound to people without a relationship, right? If somebody with an existing relationship, client vendor engagement, can't convert and get a meeting with this sort of email, it's going to be really hard to do it outbound. So I just want to set that framework too. Like, this does apply to outbound just as much as it does to, the recipe, the formula for building desire and relevance to get a meeting translates across all aspects of business, whether it's an existing customer, a new customer, a prospect, a best friend, whatever. I mean, there's different things you do, but the recipe is still pretty similar. So here's this week's episode. This is the next email in the sequence. Hi, Austin. Circling back on this topic, as my email may have fallen down in your inbox. Nope, it didn't. Did you know that one of the most pressing reasons reps leave is because of unequal or poor performing territories? Adjusting territories after unforeseen Salesforce changes are complex, manual, and time-consuming. The time and resources required to realign territories make it difficult to keep up with changing business dynamics and unpredictable circumstances, new products, new reps, growth goals, resulting in lost revenue and missed sales goals. Ensuring equitable territories is an ongoing challenge for many of my customers. Our company helps simplify this process. You can see a short demo of how here. Are you responsible for territory planning at NewArcs? If not, would you be able to point me to who would be best to speak to about this? All right, do we want to see the color codes? Here we go. So my first read on this, so I do just want to say, and this is kind of from a grammatical standpoint, but as Grayson's color coding will point out, that middle section is like, it's telling a story in a really complicated way, right? I think this is a good example of telling too much story. And I don't mean, and too much of the wrong things. They feel the need to like explain things down to, they don't know enough about me to get specific. So they keep the very specific details vague, right? They're talking about very specific things in generic terms. And I think that's why there's a bit of a word salad going on towards the middle of that second paragraph. But, it's actually not too bad if this were an outbound email. What I mean is there's some good elements in there. They're like, so for example, the question at the beginning, I think is a really, I thought it was pretty good. It was a pretty good insight. It's a good way to start an email as opposed to the other one.
Yeah, I think there are good pieces to it, and it does have the core components of trying to set context or kind of like set the stage for the conversation. They did provide details about some problems and some future states that these types of buyers would care about. They did, yes, provide a lot of information in a big paragraph, but they did that. And then they also provided, a pretty good little kind of opt-in to go click through and view their demo video, and then kind of opened up with a general question, trying to learn more information about the account. I think there are pieces that together make this email, it can stand on its own. I think that what they put in each piece is really the issue. And the first one that I want to touch on is the intro. I see this still. I feel like this started years and years and years ago, and just like it never died. It just kind of keeps growing. But people love to use this kind of like manipulative, like making people feel guilty intro where they say like, hey, just wanted to reach out in case this slipped the radar, or just, hey, wanted to reach out because I know that it is probably a priority for you and you don't want to miss it. But trying to trying to guess at what happened and why they didn't respond or read your email is a little risky. And it also, in my opinion, I think it distracts from the topic at hand. When I do follow-up emails, like when my purpose is to just follow up on a previous email, I tend to use very direct statements like, just following up, Austin, because, or just following up, Austin, about, and getting directly to the point when you're trying to follow up. Because what this tells me is the person, like Austin said, doesn't really have enough specific information to have a topic that would draw me in a follow-up. And so what they resort to is trying to almost use kind of like a manipulation between two professionals, where it's like, oh, I don't want to call you out, but reviewing an inbox is important, and it looks like my email that I sent to you fell down. I think that approach has been used for a while, and it has steadily gotten less and less effective. And I would say, like, now is the time in 2021 where sales teams and buyers alike are extremely digitally empowered. I would stop reaching out and follow-up messages simply to say, hey, I'm following up. I would have a clear reason behind it.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, this circling back or following up, or hey, we need to rendezvous, or whatever. I don't know what kind of words you want to put together, but that it just doesn't work, right? I mean, the amount of people that, so this was something I did early on in my career, because I had a sales manager that insisted on, and we did for some context, I mean, our sale, my first SaaS AE job was like, was about just shy of 50K ACV. Sales cycle was like 90 days, maybe 120 if it was longer, but average sales cycle was 60, 90 days. But my sales manager demanded that we follow up daily. Like, we needed to follow up every single day from the time we did a demo. And I'm like, but God, dude, and it never made sense to me, right? Where I'm like, dude, you know that the sales side, it's going to take, a month longer to close this guy. There's no way asking, hey, did you sign the contract a day later? So, I mean, I think that did a couple of things. One is I did a lot of stuff like this at the start, and I made a ton of people mad and lost a lot of deals, but then I learned how to get creative with it. And I think what you're saying here is spot on. Like, you need to have a good reason to make a follow-up email. Now, you shouldn't lead with the guilt trip. You could probably just delete the orange line and say, hey, did you know this? If you notice, the structure of this follows a lot of good, cold outreach things, right? The only difference is, I think, in this regard, is that your email has a better chance of getting opened. I think if you treat it like it's cold and you're trying to educate people, on how to use the product they already buy from you in a different way, and subsequently purchase something new. So, I mean, I think there's a huge education opportunity here. And that's why I like the question they ask, because they're tying two things that seem unrelated: territory planning and turnover. But they said, hey, did you know those things are actually very correlated? If you have poorly planned territories, you're going to churn a lot of reps, which is probably more expensive than you'll pay for our product.
Right. Yeah. And I think you make a good point there about putting the question in the front. And that goes to customer centricity, like being empathetic of your customers. I think about this all the time when I write my emails, and you're right. What would a prospect for an upsell want to read more from you, a vendor? Circling back on this topic as my email, and that's probably all that would show up in the intro? Or did you know that one of the most pressing reasons reps leave, I mean, just like, it's a stellar difference in both the relevance and I think the urgency in terms of like getting someone to open up the email. So I think you make a great point there. And I do think that this email has a lot of the good pieces in it. The problem, and we've talked about this in past episodes, is that it brings up too much, too fast, and kind of expects the buyer to put the puzzle pieces together and make the conclusions based on like 50, 70 words of text. And so when we kind of go through this bulky section here, the seller kind of goes over different topics. First, he's talking about adjusting territories and kind of the challenges behind that. And then he's talking about adjusting territories to keep up with business changes and unpredictable circumstances. And then he's talking about ensuring equitable territories, which yeah, they all have something to do with one another, but they're all three completely different topics in one paragraph, which from a sales perspective, that's potential landmines of distraction that can get people either bored or maybe overconsumed on the wrong thing, or maybe they just think that, like Austin says, you're being so vague and trying to cover all bases that they don't really feel like you can add value to them, and a conversation isn't as likely to happen. And so for this middle section, I would focus on really honing down to the specific sentence that is best for what you just shared with them. If you're wanting them to realize that one of the most pressing reasons that reps leave is unequal or poor performing territories, then what's the story to go with that? It shouldn't be telling someone a stat and then trying to sell them a meeting. That generally doesn't work. But if you can tell someone an interesting stat and then create a storyline that they can resonate with and like relate to, that kind of goes through what that means. What does it mean that reps leave because of unequal or poor performing territories? What does poor performing or unequal territories even mean? Kind of going into the actual picture of the story you're presenting. I think just doing that and maybe kind of like honing in on a few specific things in this big paragraph would have done wonders in terms of making it a lot more concise and easier to read.
Yeah, and that's where this is where copywriting, the skill of copywriting comes in, right? Where you actually know how to put like this is a really good example of writing for the sake of writing versus copywriting. And I think that like the way I think about it is I try to have one idea and then, your intro to that idea. And then the rest of the email is a snowball of idea momentum where like the next part should build. And then the snowball should get big enough so that in the call to action, it's worth taking whatever action you recommend. So part of the job is making sure your action is easy enough and not asking too much for what you can accomplish in that snowball's time, But where this one breaks down is there's three different snowballs. None of them have enough time to either gather substance. Like it could be three different emails. I also think, the demo of the product is okay, but something that would be a little bit more compelling is like if they started, hey, one of the reasons reps leave is because unequal underperforming territories. I would have loved to see the piece of content be like, here's all the other reasons reps leave. And here's how we found that unequal or underperforming territories were the biggest reason. If it was a study on that, and then part of it was saying, hey, here, and then the middle part is talking about maybe talks about, I don't know, where they talk about what causes, like you said, what makes a territory underperforming, what makes it unequal, what are the common mistakes people make when they plan? Is it only doing geography? Is it only doing based on population density or ICP location, right? Because they'll probably have a location, if you're doing account based, you probably have your list of your dream accounts. Do they only divide up the territories based on dream accounts? And the reality is that they can't get traction or something, that I don't know. That's what I would love to learn from you, the vendor. This is probably a good point to transition to the rewrite, and let's see how you did it. Unless you got something else on this one.
No, I think we're good. I think in the last episode, we touched a little bit on the CTA and kind of like how to position yourself when you have an existing relationship. But I think we'll skip that one for now so we can go into the rewrite.
Yeah, just for sake of time. Oh my goodness, so much smaller. All right. Hi, Austin. I'm curious if Newarks currently uses territory planning for its sales team. In my conversations with today's sales leaders, one of the most pressing reasons why reps leave is because of unequal or poor performing territories. If Newarks is looking for better sales outcomes this year, I'd love to show you how teams at this company and this company use us to improve rep productivity and selling time. Will this be worth discussing? All right. Well, first of all, so there's something here that I haven't told everybody. It's that and this may change actually, but today at Newarks, we do not use sales territories. It is open season. If you're a rep, you can hunt anything, anywhere, anytime, as long as it's in the United States, Canada, or Mexico. So, I mean, I guess in that regard, we have territories, but just, we just can't provide some of our solutions in other countries. But I like this because it addresses that, right? So where somebody, I think if you look at, even if in episode 20, so if you look at, so I'm going to jump back here to this email really quick. If you look here to this email and then you jump up to the email they sent again, they didn't change their assumption. They assume that we have territories. They assume that we do things a certain way, and they're kind of just plowing forward on that idea throughout their sequence. What I like about this is you say, hey, you're going to operate under that assumption as a seller, but only in your mind, not in the email. You know, you're disarming the assumption like, hey, do you use territory planning for your sales team? Do you plan your territories out every year? Because some people might not. Some people might not touch them at all. I don't know.
Yeah. And I was trying to actually get to that point of showing a way that you can kind of change up the angles of your emails to generate responses. In the last episode that we reviewed this person's sequence, that was one of the main kind of challenges that we pointed out is, you know, you should have this data if you're the person's vendor, and you shouldn't be afraid to just leverage that relationship to ask and get information on whether or not this is actually a qualified upsell. And so in this email rewrite, I'm trying to show an example of how it's okay to be direct, especially if you're going to like stay relevant, not make any risky assumptions, and then also offer some value. And so, you know, I don't think that there is a problem to ask somebody or say, hey, I'm curious if your company is doing this. I don't think people find that annoying. I think especially if you have an existing relationship and or maybe a little bit of industry authority, that actually kind of comes with a little bit of curiosity on their part, because they're like, oh, whoa, like this person in my space who educates me on XYZ is curious if I'm doing something. Like it makes them feel like they matter. And so I don't think that there's a problem with having genuine empathy and curiosity towards what someone's doing. And it saves you the face falling that you do if your assumption's wrong. Because here, Austin could have simply responded, hey, Grayson, thanks, but I don't use territory planning. Perfect. That's exactly what I needed to know. Now I can change my whole, it saved me a ton of time. I can change my whole sequence to now educate you on territory planning rather than assuming that you do territory planning. And all it took was framing the assumption as a curiosity to see if it's either validated, which means, yes, I do territory planning and I'd love to talk, or invalidated and say, hey, you know, good hypothesis. That hypothesis is wrong. We actually do it this way. I think that's invaluable information for someone who's trying to qualify based on whether they're doing territory planning. And then what you'll notice is I kept the same storyline. So I used the exact same quote about why reps leave, but I just changed the perspective of it. Instead of it making it kind of like an advertisement towards like, did you know XYZ? Yeah. I framed it as a conversation, you know, like in my chats with other people like you. Here's what they say about territory planning. It's a little bit easier to absorb, and I'm priming them to think it's relevant because they are a sales leader. So I'm saying to them, hey, I've talked to people like you, and this is what people like you think about this topic, which makes it a lot more relevant than just saying, did you know? Because then it's on the buyer to decide, A, do they know? And B, do they care? Finally, I did try to soften the blow of, okay, if they don't do territory planning, how else could I start a conversation with them? And so what I did is I reframed the whole topic at the end of what I wanted to talk about. Because although I'm reaching out because I am curious if they're doing territory planning, I don't need them to be doing territory planning to influence them in this deal. And so what I really want them to focus on is what territory planning can bring them, which is A, better sales outcomes, more or improved rep productivity, more selling time for reps. Those are the things that can fall out of territory planning. And so to kind of go into the last episode where they just made these assumptions that Austin did territory planning and that's true, and we're going to talk about territory planning. Instead, I tried to reframe it to say, hey, even if you don't do territory planning, do any of these benefits maybe resonate with you? Because if they do, guess what? The answer is territory planning and me trying to then talk about my app and selling them on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, what you see here is like, this is unfortunately, the stereotypical, like predictable revenue account development rep, right? That's putting stuff into a sequence and trying to like this company obviously wants to grow that segment by X%. And they know if they just push enough ADRs to message that same message across their accounts, that they can predict that they'll have a certain percentage uplift and that it'll hit targets. So I can see why, sometimes it's management putting the rep in poor position, which could be the case. But, like you're saying here, I would love to have somebody. So the last part of your message does happen to really resonate with me. I mean, I really think we would benefit from sales engagement software as an organization, because we currently don't use anything. Everything's manual. And so, yeah, I mean, if the end of your email really opens the doors for me as a sales leader to say, hey, actually, I don't use territory planning. Thanks for being curious about it, but I would really like to look into using something else. Like, I don't know if this company has what I'm looking for, but it does open the conversation to at least for me to reach out to this person and see, hey, how could you help me if territory planning isn't what I need? And I think that's important. There should be, if you're a CSM, there should be times where you figure out, hey, how do the companies in your portfolio operate, and get to know them, make those notes. That's what belongs in the CRM is, hey, why are these people using this product this way? And, all of the business drivers and process around that, and understanding that really can help you in your outreach. Now, obviously for cold sellers, we don't have the same luxury, but if you do have the advantage of them already being your customer, that's invaluable information. And how you're not leveraging that, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe you have too many customers.
Even still, like, it's good to have a yes or a no. I think salespeople nowadays get very wrapped up into this idea that it's like, either take a meeting with me or you're not worth my time. And I'll reach back out when you are worth my time and ready for a meeting. And that's not how most sales processes kick off. It's a very, very small percentages of companies in a space at any time are actually in market to the point to where they have a pain, they're feeling it, and they want to solve it. For the rest of them out there, if you're reaching out and you're like, hey, take a meeting with me or we're done talking, most of them are like, okay, like, happy to meet you, see ya. Instead, what you need to be doing is planting seeds of conversation that can influence them, whether they're this way or that way. That's the best sales process that you can run, is one that actually has a game plan for both someone that's on the no track or someone that's on the yes track, or maybe someone that's on the I don't know, maybe not ready track. I think that's how you really master the entire buying cycle, because you're never going to consistently get only in-market buyers that are hopping at the feet to come close a deal with you. For the most part, it's going to be these people that are a little bit skeptical, a little bit lost, a little bit confused. And it's your job as the salesperson, not only to get them to a position to where they can close with you, but also to guide them and educate them in this process so that they believe in it and that they actually believe that this is a good solution. So that would be really the last advice I'd leave there. It looks like we are about at the top of the hour. So for everyone who joined us today on Zoom, thank you so much. We're going to be doing this every week on Zoom, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, every Monday. So check us out on LinkedIn, or you can view this video later on the SDRev YouTube. Austin, anything else you wanted to add for today's episode?
I think you covered it. That was great.
Awesome. Well, cool. Thanks everyone for joining us. Have a happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And we will see you next week.
See ya.